I'm like in Jersey, but I live like right outside New York, and that's where I like working. That's where I like teaching. My dad's from New York. I have a lot of family from New York. That's what my like perception of the world is. The band was founded here, and me personally, I never feel really home anywhere in like my own like point of view. Boston is like a great city to be in, and like to go to school here, to have friends here, and like learn how to be a musician here. But personally myself, I feel like I'm like a very nomadic person. A lot of verse was written in different places. Like some of those songs were written in New Jersey, some of those songs were written in our apartment in Boston. Some of those songs were in like different apartments and different places we've had. So I feel like a place doesn't have a like having the need to have a home base and be locate somewhere or centered somewhere doesn't affect my my writing, but because I feel like, but it does influence like the type what I'm writing. But I don't feel like I need to be settled in any specific place in order to create things. If that makes sense.
For sure, that's a great answer.
All I got to say about that, and I'll tell you 2 things.
I'll tell you 3 things. It doesn't quite matter where you are.
Yeah. I got into playing guitar because I saw the movie School of Rock when I was 11 years old, and I was literally that Asian kid who went up to Jack Black and said, "I'm not cool enough," and I felt that was me. So I wanted to do that. I was gonna like start a band with the guy. I was gonna play piano because I played piano already, and my mom's like, "No, you should just play guitar." So she got me a guitar, and I just started playing guitar for like all my life, and then I went to school up here for guitar. And that's when I started I Kill Giants. So I started a band with Sander and my friends Dylan and Nick Shell when we were in school together, and we did that for 3 years. And then we ended up breaking up because Dylan moved back to Seattle. So then Sander and I started People Like You.
When I got into Berkeley, I was like, oh, okay, this is like a thing with Facebook to like friend request all these people going to school. Like I was just so excited. I was like, oh, I can like see if any of these kids like bands that I like, so I can like connect with them beforehand and maybe jam. So I actually like friend requested Chris before even going to school, and he happened to like the sound of animals fighting, which is like my favorite band, and I was like, oh my god, perfect, like I bet this dude's like shreds a guitar. And then I Kill Giants started, yada yada yada, years went by of playing in that band, and then when everything came to a close, we wanted to keep making music. So by that point I had studied a lot. I started to understand jazz a little bit. I still don't think I do understand it fully, but I attempt to. So, but yeah, drums are sick.
I was in this anxious panic that I wasn't going to be in any band anymore. And I've said this before, but I feel like I've always been in a band. I only know how to be a person as like a person that's in a band and writes music for stuff. So I got really anxious. I started writing a lot of music, and I kind of threw it at Nick and Sander, and I was like, we gotta learn this. Let's just figure it out. And we recorded it over a weekend. I met Michi that year.
Chris and I met at poetry at Berkeley, and Chris recognized me because I was at an I Kill Giants show like a week before that, and he was like, you were at the I Kill Giants show, like that's so cool.
I met Chris at Berkeley. We met just our first year. He was writing all these songs and had them in mind for I Kill Giants, but it didn't really, the band was kind of starting to just fizzle out. Again, had the idea of having trumpet over it. band. So I wrote some parts with the initial plan to just kind of play over the album, not really like join the band, but just kind of be like featured on the album as well as Michi. But ended up like going to the recording session and playing over like a lot of stuff. So there was like a lot of presence of trumpet on the album as it turned out. And then I joined the band. That's the story of People Like You, basically. That's how I came to be a member in People Like You.
I think there was an official, like, you should join the band, but it felt kind of like I was just like around and I just like, you know, we meshed well.
So I joined the band 2 years ago. Yeah, it's like his 2-year anniversary with us. He joined sometime in October.
Chris and I met at the same time that Sander and I did, which is at one of their old band shows.
Like, I like American football. I think they're a good band, but I don't know. I'm not like a huge American football head. It's trademarking that. TM. I only know the one song that everyone knows, and that's pretty much it.
The thing that I like about him a lot is that he comes from like on the music industry, Jeff Rosenstock kind of background where it's high energy, you know, high octane, let's rock out, let's leave it all on stage. And he is also just a technically masterful guitarist.
I met Chris in a poetry setting in his like zone of doing spoken word, and I feel like that is like a huge part of who he is, and what he brings to the band is this really like he speaks outward, like anything that's like happening in his brain is happening in the music, lyrically, motifically, if that's a word. It's not even layering though. It's
no, there's still sleeves.
I know, but it's not like a shirt that's underneath.
It is.
Oh, it's
No,
not. Whoa.
There's sleeves. Really nice when it's cool. So it's like when I wear a t-shirt underneath my hoodie, and then my arms are fine.
I don't feel like I can trust you anymore. Playing with Sander is an insane experience. Even if I don't know that I want it, like him to play a certain way, he starts playing and I'm like, that's what I wanted. His playing is like organized chaos. So the way that it comes together is just like, oh, like how did you think of that, you know?
I think the thing that I like most about Sander's playing is that it's always out of the box. And he's very creative. He's like a very creative person. I don't have to be afraid of sounding like something because I know whatever Sander brings, whatever groove he creates or input he adds to the song will always be trying to change something different, things I wouldn't realize. And it's very conversational when we play.
I admire Sander because when he first came to Berkeley and I met him, you know, shortly after that, Sander was a good drummer, but he wasn't, to be frank, the greatest, you know, and I think that he, more than anyone I've ever seen, pushes himself in his craft. He has spent tireless amounts of time working on drums and working on becoming a better musician. You know, watching him and making eye contact with him when we're on stage is like, you know, it's driving. He just drives everyone. You know, being a drummer, you have to be the foundation. A band is only as good as their drummer. And Sander is one of the best drummers I've played with, so.
Like, the thing with drums is to me, it's the most arbitrary instrument. It doesn't matter what you play as long as you keep the time. You literally have these tools, and there's just so many things to say and so many different ways to phrase just one thing. But yeah, it's drums are arbitrary. Drums are just drums. So like you have to make it, you got to put some thought into it to make it a real speaking instrument. The tone and the feeling that you can hear in Michi's voice is, I think, a huge reflection of like her personality and like who she is.
Her voice is the tenderness of it and how like soft but controlled it can be is helps me as a writer too, as like a songwriter and like a musician, because I'm always used to going really loud and going 100 and just like throwing it all out there, and working with her helps me like be really refined and try to pull back and teaches me about control over my instrument. So I feel like she has control over her voice. Her songwriting adds another effect, another level, where we're not like a monolith of a sound. You know, we're not always have all the songs are the same thing. We're not always yelling, or we're not always singing pop songs. We have range and we could do so much.
What's really great about her vocals is that it's very commanding without being loud in volume. I think that's a super unique trait that a lot of people don't have or don't use to their full advantage, you know. Also just being, you know, in the genre that we are, being lumped with quote unquote emo bands, there is kind of this expectation for vocalists who are women to have fit into this stereotype or this role that she doesn't, and you know, it's very outside the mold, which is great. You know, bringing a keyboard into the mix in a very tasteful way. I think that almost everything that she does in this group is tasteful, and that's hard to find in a group of 5 people that has as many moving parts as we do.
From the parts I write, a lot of the time they're in unison with Michi's voice or in harmony with Michi's voice. So I've done a lot of work in like, and I'm sure she has too, to like make the blend happen, like blending our 2 voices together. So it's cool. I feel like I've really gotten close to the sound of her voice and her music.
Sometimes I feel like a keyboard is like an accessory instrument, and likewise I feel like sometimes people view like the horn as an accessory instrument. The way Matt plays trumpet is it's another voice, and a lot of times we harmonize with each other, and it becomes like another part of the story that's being told. And I think that he does like an incredible job at using his trumpet like to storytell.
When we started playing more together, he started being included in the collaborative process, and it's like having another voice, like another vocalist in the band, because how the melodies he writes are very drive a lot of the songs, and it's very, how he plays is very lyrical, and like he can play really out, but when he plays really into it, works really well.
Matt is definitely one of the greatest musicians like I've ever had the pleasure of playing with.
I think that one thing that immediately surprised me after joining the band was how diverse his interests are musically, and how much he draws from genres that you wouldn't expect necessarily a trumpet player to draw out of. At least once a show, or at least once during a rehearsal, it's kind of that jaw-dropping moment where I'm like, where did you come from?
The trumpet is meant to be more than just like an auxiliary thing. It's supposed to be like one of the main voices in people like you, just much like Chris is singing or Michi's singing. You know, there's really like 3 vocalists, I guess is how you can think of it. They're all on like the equal like playing field. that influence, I think, on people like you, of the trumpet being like a solo voice on the same level, same playing field as Michi Chris's vocals, comes from jazz.
So I joined the band 2 years ago. He's probably like one of the best additions to our band. And the reason why we sound so well crafted is because he has a arranger's mind. Well, hey, he's sick at bass. He rips so well, and he's able to like move around these changes that I write and these like chord progressions that I write, and really add a lot.
Sai is my partner. So Sai is a guitarist, and obviously he plays bass for our band, and sometimes doesn't like to play bass. Sai only plays bass when we're practicing or at a gig. Sai's a Virgo, and in his music playing, his music playing is really strategic.
It wasn't until my sophomore year at Berklee that I picked up a bass really for the first time, which is what I play in People Like You. A huge part of my development with the bass specifically was I didn't want to be a guitar player who plays bass. I wanted to come across as a natural bass player who also happens to play other instruments.
I think I just want to say about everybody, like it's just kind of an ongoing learning experience, like learning about everyone's like musical habits and writing processes, and I think that's kind of cool. Everyone, there's a lot to learn. We all have a lot to learn from each other still, and I think that's a good sign that there's a lot more to come.
She's running out of space.
the election happened, and that whole fiasco happened. And I was in a dark place, and I saw Jeff Rosenstock play at the Villain in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. They started doing this thing where they started making these little like pins and started selling it and fundraising. I'm not as good of an activist as all my other activist friends that do like really good work and like actually protest and like risk getting arrested and stuff, and I don't do any of that. So I never want to put myself on that. We had all this extra stuff that wasn't selling. Poetry books, these t-shirts that just weren't selling. I was like, fuck it, we're not gonna make any money from this. Everything's resource, money is resources, so let's use these resources and send it to resources to help. So we started finding all these places we could donate to, like Planned Parenthood, like ACLU, like BARC, like the Standing Rock Legal Defense Fund. We started raising money. We just raised money for to help send my family in Puerto Rico a generator, because that whole mess is, we have a whole, several documentaries on that. I'm not trying to spread any message. I'm not trying to like promote any ideologue or anything, because I have my own personal beliefs and I don't want to like make that the band, but I do want to use the band as a form of resources and helping sending those resources to places that need those resources right now.
As a listener, like not as someone who participated in the record, but like if I heard verse for the first time, I don't know that it's necessarily like super easily digestible. I think one neat part of the songwriting process is that verse is like exactly the sum of its parts. It's a really like interesting feeling to have your thoughts and like experiences in song form in the world.
A lot of verse was written in different places. Like some of those songs were written in New Jersey, some of those songs were written in our apartment in Boston. Some of those songs were in like different apartments and different places we've had. So, and the new songs we're writing, a lot of that was written when I was at that time in New Jersey, but some of the parts were written here. I had a song that I wrote in Spain when I went to Spain for a little bit. So I feel like in my nature, my own personal nature, I always have to be moving. I always have to be going somewhere else. So I might stay. I don't know if I'll ever come back here. I don't know if I'll stay in New York. I don't know if I'll go somewhere else. But where it is, I want to be like near this band and keep this band as active as we can.